Once upon a time, in a world not so different from ours, there was a great struggle that shaped the course of history. This struggle was not just a fight between armies or nations, but a battle of ideas, beliefs, and power. It was a conflict that pitted the Church, the spiritual heart of Christendom, against the crowned heads of Europe, the temporal rulers who held the reins of the physical world. This battle lasted for centuries, and its echoes can still be heard today. Imagine a world where religion and politics were so intertwined that the fate of kings and emperors hinged on the decisions of the Pope, a man who, despite not wielding an army, could bring the most powerful leaders to their knees. This is the story of that struggle, and how it changed the face of Europe. In the year 426, a man named Augustine completed a monumental work that would influence Christian thought for generations to come. At the time, Pope Celestine I was the leader of the Catholic Church, a position that had been passed down through a long line of successors. Augustine's work, though profound, was just one chapter in a much larger story that would unfold over the next 600 years. By 1076, more than 100 popes had come and gone, and the struggle between the Church and the secular rulers of Europe was far from over. One of the most dramatic moments in this long saga occurred when Pope Gregory VII, in a moment of frustration and desperation, excommunicated Emperor Henry IV. Excommunication was the ultimate sanction the Church could impose, effectively cutting a person off from the community of believers and condemning their soul to eternal damnation. The emperor's response was nothing short of miraculous. Henry, a powerful ruler, traveled to the castle of Canossa in northern Italy, where he stood for 3 days and nights in the snow, barefoot and in penitent's garb, begging for the Pope's forgiveness. The image of this mighty emperor humbling himself before the Pope became a powerful symbol of the Church's authority. However, Henry's contrition was short-lived. Once absolved, he resumed his attack on the Church, driving Gregory from Rome and forcing him into exile. Gregory, in his final days, wrote a poignant message: "I have loved justice and hated iniquity, therefore I die in exile." His words captured the bitter irony of a man who fought for the Church's independence, but ultimately failed to achieve it. The conflict between the Church and the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire continued for another century until Innocent III, one of the most powerful popes in history, finally brought the Church to the height of its prestige and power in the early 13th century. By this time, the medieval world had taken on the appearance of a triumphant Christendom. Kings and princes owed their legitimacy to divine authority, and the Church had become the wealthiest landowner on the continent. The life of every European from birth to death was governed by the Church's teachings and rituals. However, beneath this veneer of Christian dominance, there was a persistent undercurrent of paganism that refused to be completely eradicated. The old gods Thor, Hermes, Zeus, Juno, Cronus, Saturn, and others had not vanished. They had simply gone underground, continuing to influence the beliefs and practices of the people. The rituals, myths, and legends of the old faiths were deeply ingrained in the lives of medieval Europeans, who found in them a sense of comfort and explanation for the unpredictable and often harsh world they lived in. The Church, recognizing the resilience of these pagan beliefs, adopted a strategy of co-opting and transforming them. Christian churches were built on the foundations of pagan temples, and the names of biblical saints were given to groves and sites that had been considered sacred for centuries before the birth of Jesus. The Church also adapted pagan holidays, giving them Christian meanings. For example, the pagan festival of Floralia, which celebrated the arrival of spring, was replaced by Pentecost. The Roman festival for the dead was transformed into All Souls' Day, and the ancient celebrations of the winter solstice, when even slaves enjoyed great freedom, became Christmas. The resurrection of the pagan god Ares was transformed into Easter, the celebration of Christ's resurrection. These changes were not random. They were strategic moves to make Christianity more appealing to the masses, and to gradually replace the old beliefs with new ones. However, the transition was far from smooth, and many people continued to hedge their bets by practicing both Christian and pagan rituals. The Church's efforts to control the spiritual lives of the people were not always successful. Despite the Church's teachings, many medieval Europeans found the old gods and their rituals more accessible and relatable. The Church's emphasis on humility, mercy, and kindness stood in stark contrast to the more immediate and tangible benefits offered by the pagan gods. For example, the Christian doctrine that procreation was a necessary evil was at odds with the pagan celebration of fertility and lust. The old gods, with their capricious and sometimes cruel nature, seemed more in line with the unpredictable and often harsh realities of medieval life. People continued to worship in the old ways, often in secret, and the Church's attempts to stamp out these practices were often met with resistance. One of the most striking examples of this resistance was the Flagellant movement, which emerged during the Black Death in the 14th century. The Flagellants were a radical sect who believed that the plague was a divine punishment for human sin. They would travel from town to town, whipping themselves in public as a form of penance, hoping to appease God and end the plague. The Church, fearing the spread of this movement, condemned the Flagellants as heretics, but the movement persisted, reflecting the deep-seated belief in the power of both the Church and the old gods. The traffic in holy relics, objects believed to have supernatural powers, also continued to thrive. Relics of saints, believed to be capable of performing miracles, were highly sought after and often the focus of pilgrimages. These relics, often pieces of bone or cloth, were seen as tangible connections to the divine and were believed to have the power to heal the sick, protect the faithful, and bring good fortune. The Church's endorsement of these relics added to its authority, but it also created a market for fraud and superstition. People were willing to pay large sums of money for relics, and many unscrupulous individuals took advantage of this, selling fake relics or exaggerating the powers of genuine ones. Despite the Church's efforts to control every aspect of medieval life, the old beliefs and practices stubbornly persisted. The Church's teachings were often at odds with the practical needs and desires of the people. The pagan gods, with their more immediate and tangible benefits, continued to offer a form of comfort and explanation that the Church sometimes struggled to provide. The Church's authority, while vast, was not absolute, and the people of medieval Europe often found themselves torn between the old and the new, the pagan and the Christian. In the end, the story of the Church's struggle with the crowned heads of Europe and the persistence of paganism is a story of human resilience and the enduring power of belief. It is a story that reminds us that change is never easy, and that even the most powerful institutions can be challenged and reshaped by the beliefs and practices of the people they seek to govern. The medieval world, with its complex interplay of religion, politics, and culture, is a testament to the human capacity for adaptation and the enduring nature of faith in all its forms.